Hello, team, and welcome to episode 42 of Creative English. If I were you, team, today we have a good one. I know I say that a lot, but this is one of my favorite classes. We're going to be talking about the conditionals, which is just a fancy way of saying if. And I love if because it opens up so much possibility. Half of the books back here and up here that you cannot see are about what if. And I think one solid, interesting what if question can produce some of the best creative English practice you could possibly want. And team, we're going to be examining the details about this if, and I have a promise for you. Yes, a guarantee. Today, if you pay attention, you will leave this class using if better than a native speaker. Why do I say this? I've taught this class a bunch of times, and every time I teach it, I learn something new that we don't see in school, in the US at least, and things that I don't hear from native speakers that are wrong but considered okay. So today is your chance to speak better than a native speaker. All right. So let's see what we've got. And I'm going to start ripping the Band-Aid off right with the most difficult point. What if you had studied something else? What if you had worked with another area? What if you had gone down another path? What would you have done? And this is the hardest part of our class today. And I gave you an example. If I had been more aware of how much I like healthy movement, I would have become a physical therapist. I admire physical therapists. I think it's really cool what they do. And I think they help the world a lot. And they could more if we went to them more. So I would have been a physical therapist had I not become an English teacher. All right. Now, team, our grammar point, and I make it a persona for each of these to help you remember, starting with the zero conditional, the textbook. This is something that is true for me, it's true for you, it's true for João, for Marie, it's true here in Belo Horizonte, it's true in Rio, it's true, it will be true in the future, it was true in the past. And for this, we just use the present with the present. That's it. Simple truths, facts. Mistake number one I see from my students, sometimes when we are talking about these general facts, they will include a will. I don't want to see a will yet. So some examples, if it rains, the grass gets wet. This is true here, in Rio, in Sao Paulo, in China. It's true now, it was true. You lose weight if you ingest less calories than you burn. It's true for all of us. What happens if you heat ice? I noticed that the McDonald's lovers knew this word. The others did not. It melts. So yes, it melts. Now, part two, this is weird because part two is the first conditional. I call this the CEO. What's the CEO's job in a company? He needs to say, if we do this, this will happen. If we don't do this, this will be the result. If we try this, maybe this will happen. And it's like predicting the future. And most important point, when you use the word will, you can use going to, you can use can. I always go to the 80% rule. Will is the most common. If you do this, if you use the word will, you are saying this is in our future. This will be relevant in a few minutes. So, similar to the sentence before, if it rains, the grass gets wet. Sorry, that was the example before. If it rains, the grass will get wet. What's the difference? Maybe Lise, she says, the grass is really dry. And I say, if it rains tonight, the grass will get wet tomorrow. So I'm talking about something that can be in our future. It's real. We're walking down this path. We will need to hire 2 new employees if Jenkins resigns. Jenkins is like an Excel ninja. He does the work of 2. What will you do if you pass the interview? Either you will accept the job or you won't. Up to this point, it's usually easy. Now we get to the weird one. And I'm just the messenger. I need to teach it. But I also think it's weird that we use the past tense when we are talking about hypothetical situations. I like to define terms. So for grammar purposes for our class, I want you to understand hypothetical as not true, in this case, now. So something that is not true now, we're considering hypothetical, and we're talking about the fantasy writer. And here, I need to hear this word right here, would. sometimes it's could, sometimes it should, but each of them has only one meaning. Would has all the rest. So would is the most common. And you need to use the past form. The most common mistake, and usually I will say this, my students go like this, and then 5 minutes later, they make a mistake. If you are talking about something that is hypothetical, I need to hear the would. I cannot hear a will. All right? So if this will happen, it is a possibility. If this would happen, it is hypothetical and at least not true at the moment. Why am I emphasizing this not true at the moment? I could say if I were rich and one day maybe I will make a lot of money and I will be rich. It's a possibility. I could also say, what if I were Harry Potter and I cannot be Harry Potter? No magic. So it doesn't matter whether it's possible or not, but both are not true right now. Some examples. If it rained, the grass would get wet. I can imagine the philosophy students, man, if it rained, the grass would get wet, dude. Sure. Cars would be unnecessary if we knew how to fly. I know we have planes, but I can't go like this and fly. So it is not true now. Where would you go if you won a vacation? I would love to go to a beach. I would go to Alagoas. I have heard about, it's Cleitinho. Cleitinho. Is the name of a guy whose contact I have in my WhatsApp, who takes you in the middle of the ocean for you to have a barbecue. So yes, Clabinho, that's the correct name. So one day I will take the family there. And the last one, number 4, which is the third conditional, it's the crybaby. And I say this to remember it's not necessarily you're whining, but it does sound like it a little bit. So with the crybaby, this is the most complex form. You need to use the past perfect. For those of you who don't like the names of grammar, had plus verb, specifically past participle. And here you need to have would, have, past participle. So quick timeout to remember how this works. Would is a modal verb, so the verb after it will always be in its base form. Would have, and you won't have would has, you won't have would had, but have as an auxiliary as well takes the past participle. So this is an easy one to kind of mess up one word or two, but if it had rained, the grass would have gotten wet. And in this example, maybe Lisa asked me, "Oh, did it rain yesterday?" I'm like, I don't think so. If it had rained, the grass would have gotten wet. And this is an example that in the past was untrue. With the example we saw before, untrue now. With this one, it was untrue when you had this opportunity to work in another direction. Thanos would have won if the Avengers hadn't arrived. They did arrive. The portals opened. Captain, on your left. And you know the rest of the story. What would have happened if you had invested in Bitcoin 20 years ago? We probably would not be having this class. I would have moved to a beach somewhere probably. So, team, how will you practice this? I want you to take one simple but real sentence from your life. The realer, the easier it is to remember later. And I want you to go through all 4 forms. All right. Next up. So, actually, before I get to the next up, if you remember this, will for in our future, would for hypothetical, that's the most important part of our class today. Okay. Now, after you have mastered all of this, let's get to those 1%. 1% number 1. What's the difference between if and whether? This is how you'll beat the natives, because most native speakers that I know, they'll just use if for everything. I am guilty of this as well. When I'm writing, I do a little bit better, but they're both the same thing in Portuguese, and they're very similar. If, like we saw above, is about the conditionals. You introduce a condition. This is the condition. If it is met, there is a result. But whether introduces a choice or possibility. So, we're from Minas. So if I go to Rio, and maybe a Carioca would say, if there is sun, I will go to the beach. But as a Mineiro, whether there is sun or not, I will go to the beach. And if you can add this or not, you should use whether. It's a quick hack you can use to check. What I usually hear is people just use if for everything. I personally, I like to introduce sentences with whether. Whether you believe in this or not, that's how I usually use whether. And I'm actually not going to say this is a 2%. This is a good one. If I was and if I were. And I think this one's might look a little bit weird. Why I were? You've studied your English. You know it's I was. This gringo is trying to trick me. And no, and I would say I were is actually more common than I was. So with if I was, it is a possible past situation. Um, if I was less tired yesterday, I could have done better. And we have if I were, which is for an imaginary or unreal situation. So in this case, like Beyonce's song, if I were a boy, she is not a boy. So we use were. And I would say that were, if I were, is actually much more common than if I was. We use it a lot more because this is when you're talking about these hypothetical situations, probably unreal. You use it a lot more. Let me see. I have some good questions for you. This was an interesting one. I got a 50% increase. I would have a housekeeper 3 times a week. On Wednesdays, the housekeeper comes here. When I finish work, the house already looks like the Tasmanian devil ran through it. With 2 kids, it is difficult. I think the ideal number would be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It would be a big boost in life quality. And that was another question. Now, talking point, fourth quarter, 2 months left until Christmas. And that might be a good thing for some people. Oh, I survived. Other people like, oh my God, the year's almost over. But I have some questions for you related to this and a little game called $5 therapy, where one person presents a problem, the other person just gives the worst advice possible. Yes. And last up, I hid this at the bottom of the PDF because it is kind of frowned upon. These are known as the mixed conditionals. And anytime that you deviate from this form right here, it is known as the mixed conditional. Can you use it? Sure, nobody will notice. I actually did this up above, and I realized it while speaking that I did this by accident, and it's common. It's okay. Nobody's going to come after you and murder you for this. So, team, that's what I've got for you. Like always, thank you, and I hope to see you in class. Have a good one.